This episode is brought to you by ESPN. Catch the first WWE Premium Live event on ESPN, WrestlePalooza, live on Saturday, September 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be an epic night in Indianapolis, featuring some of the biggest WWE superstars. This event is only on ESPN, so go to stream.espn.com and sign up to the ESPN app today for your all-access pass to WrestlePalooza and all WWE Premium Live events.
So good, so good.
New fall arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Vince, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock exclusive discounts on your favorite brands. Shop new arrivals first and more. Plus, get an extra 5% off every Rack purchase with a Nordstrom credit card. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
Hey, I'm Kate Lindsay, and you're listening to ICYMI, or in case you missed it, Slate's podcast about internet culture. And I don't know about you, but I want people to party again. Like, I am the friend who is always trying to get everyone to go out, but it is getting harder and harder, and I am not the only one who has noticed. Someone who has written a lot about this is Josh Laura, who goes by Tell the Bees on both Substack and TikTok, where he takes a sociological approach to pop culture analysis. And funnily enough, who you've probably already heard when listening to our episodes because we play his TikToks all the time. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. That is very funny. I feel like I am constantly involving myself in other people's drama and like kind of eye in the sky saying, well, this is the sociological analysis, you know? But at the end of the day, I think the core is that I unfortunately am nosy and messy. And so I'm able to couch it in like explainers, but I do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Well, so now that we do have you here, there's a question that we ask everyone when it's their first time on the pod. And that is, what is your first internet memory?
Ooh, oh my goodness, that's such a good question. I feel like definitely AIM, because I unfortunately am a millennial. So I put the CDs in the desktop and like listen to the clanging and the clicking and the clacking.
Yes.
I will say that my first internet memory is like Googling X-Men and like joining an X-Men forum at like 10 years old.
Yes.
Having no context, no knowledge of the 40 years of history that the team already had, or 30 years, it was the 90s. And just, getting in there. And some would say that kind of shaped me and made me who I am because I was fully fighting with adults at 10.
Did the adults know that you were a 10-year-old in there?
Of course not. That's a new thing. I feel like Gen Z now very much is like, I'm a minor.
Right. What is it? I'm 17 and scared of
Sabrina Carpenter. They're like terrified, and that's the excuse when they're like beefing with someone. But back then, no, I would pretend to be an adult.
Yeah, you were like, I'm not scared and I'm ready to fight.
Yeah, literally, I had like a 10-word vocabulary, but I was on that X-Men forum on like GeoCities or whatever.
Also, what's funny is this is the second time this week, and so both of our episodes this week will have mentioned the concept of AIM and the internet being a thing that you put a CD in your computer to use.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a core memory. I think the generation coming up does not have that sort of flesh memory, that physicality of, receiving the CD in the mail, because back then, for any of our Gen Z listeners, you had to pay for the internet in a very specific way. So like you had the AOL CD so that you could get it for free. It was like a free trial.
Yeah.
So we would collect them from everyone in the building and constantly re-up on free. I had like 700 email addresses.
Wait, I didn't even think about what a little, 10 years old, already scamming. We're going to take a quick break here, and just a note about today's episode, you are going to hear things like sirens and street sounds just by nature of where Josh is recording from. I promise those sirens are not for you. And when we come back, Josh and I will dive into what he calls our mainstreaming of loserdom and how or if we can fight our way out of it.
Raise the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that An enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. Start converting your B2B audience today. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started today at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Hey there, so sorry to interrupt while you're enjoying today's episode, but I am once again asking Bernie Sanders' voice that you go ahead and sign up for Slate Plus. Not only will you get ad-free access to all of our episodes, but you'll also help support all the Slate podcasts. One of the things I love about Slate's whole network of podcasts is that it often feels like we're in conversation with each other. So, for instance, I just finished listening to the episode of What Next, hosted by Mary Harris, where Mary interviews Hassan Piker, a Twitch streamer who is actually set to debate Charlie Kirk later this month. The two talk about how Hassan is processing all of this as someone who is very much on the left, but still in the world of Charlie Kirk. So go give that a listen, and if you haven't already, sign up for Slate Plus by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or by going to slate.com/ICYMI Plus. And we're back. And so, Josh, I have a question. Something I think about a lot is how the internet is so good at record keeping that in like 100 years, someone can look back at everything we've done and said and get like a really clear picture of what life was like then. But then I look at the headlines that are coming out about life right now, and I'm just going to read you some. So this one is called The Antisocial Century. That was published in The Atlantic.
Oh my God.
Then there was The Rise in Flaking Out of Social Plans. That was published in The Guardian. And then back in The Atlantic, they wrote again, America Needs to Party More. Now, these are all headlines kind of getting at the same thing that you ended up summarizing in a really, really viral post on Substack that was called The Mainstreaming of Loserdom. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Of course. So yeah, I will say, when I wrote that, I literally was going on vacation and I typed it up and I pressed submit and I did not look at my phone or my email for days and days. And then I came back to chaos and madness and said, oh, oops. Yeah, so the mainstreaming of loserdom was sort of conceived in this. I spend a lot of time online, obviously, as many of us do, and I was sort of seeing this rise of a lot of people, not just Gen Z, a lot of people saying, I love being home. All I do is watch TV. This idea of like never going outside, never drinking, never partying, never seeing your friends, like the people that you are already friends with, not making new friends, not going to the gym, not having hobbies. And it was seen as sort of aspirational, right? In the piece, I included a lot of screenshots and a lot of links to tweets that would go mega viral. And I think one of the sort of pushbacks that I got is, well, this is the internet. This isn't real life. And I would say to everyone, but we're real people and we are on the internet, right? Like, right. I know people in my real life who don't go outside, who don't drink. There was this person that I knew way back in the day who was like sober, going to yoga 7 times a week, never went outside, didn't have a boyfriend, didn't have any friends, didn't do anything, and was one of the most miserable people I've ever met. And I said, well, sweetie, you're clearly not happy. Like, it just, this fixation on being in the home, but not having fun at home, right? Because it would be different if we saw this rise of like, everyone's in these online communities and everyone is happy and everyone is sort of like bubbly and excited to go home and like fight with people on their X-Men forums, right? Like, that's such a different experience than this very specific rise of people at home, not speaking to anyone, not going out, not wanting to engage, and it sort of being platformed as this like glorious pullback from mainstream society instead of what seemed to me, right, this is obviously still my opinion, but it seemed to me to be quite sad. It was a stark difference from, in the piece I say that like in the 90s, on Sex and the City, on Charmed, on Friends, these people were always going out. Like even the Seinfeld people who were professional losers, they were out all the time. They were at bars, you know, like I'm not even advocating for like drinking culture or party culture, but like it's again this idea that like it is good and kind and fun to be home and not do anything. And I'm like, you guys aren't having fun. I've been collecting data for 2 years. None of you are happy and none of you are having fun.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that, I mean, the piece exploded. It still shows up on my like Substack app. It just floats up there and I see that you have like another 1,000 more likes on it. And so it just continues to make the rounds. But what were the reactions? Like you said, some people, I don't know, it sounds like there was some pushback.
There was definitely pushback. I think I will say the majority of people who read the piece agreed with me. And I think it sort of depends on where it showed up, right? Because I did also promote it on TikTok. So there were people who completely understood and they were like, yeah, I'm 23. I don't have any friends and I'm miserable. Mm-hmm. I know what you're talking about. There were people who were 25, 26 and they're like, oh, I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend and I never go outside. I don't have any friends. You're totally right. And then there were other people who were like, this is my life. Why are you, there's nothing wrong with just wanting to be home. Everything is so expensive. I have to enjoy my rent. Mm-hmm. COVID ruined my social skills. You know, as millennials, sorry to keep bringing this up, but one of the things that I talk about a lot on TikTok is this sort of millennial obsession with victimhood and this idea of like completely surrendering yourself to your circumstances and putting the onus on the external, right? So I got a lot of that on TikTok. I fought with them a lot more than on Substack, but
well, yeah, that makes sense.
This idea that like, okay, you know, this is your life. How dare you criticize my life? I'm sad. I'm being attacked right now. And I was like, yeah, but like, this doesn't have to be your life, right? You don't have to like cement yourself and ossify yourself in this idea of never experiencing joy or pleasure, right? Because at the end of the day, what I wanted to call out more than the actual activities and behaviors, right? It was this mentality that like, none of these people were having fun or being happy, right? Like they are very defensive and angry on Substack and across the internet, but like they weren't pushing back because I was wrong. They were pushing back because they were called out.
Yeah, it's like, what, when you really look at it, like, what are you defending? You're defending a life that I would hope you would want better for yourself.
Yeah, and obviously there are different conversations. I think now that it's been a year, and we sort of talked about the Gen Z stare, right? I think that in the piece, I wasn't as sort of gracious about COVID as I would be now. Like if I were to rewrite it a year later, I would say, yeah, definitely COVID stunted the social skills of millions of people. Like I'm seeing that, I'm experiencing that now in my day to day. So I would sort of caveat that. I would say, okay, maybe I was a little bit mean because I was being provocative. But yeah, I think there is this idea, like a lot of people were really defensive and it just made me feel bad. I think on Substack, I try to practice grace more than not. Like I freely admit, I say I'm like a little bit meaner than most people because I grew up on Twitter and was like being harassed at 13.
Yeah.
But
and fighting at age 10 with X-Men
right.
fans.
That's antisocial. But yeah, it just made me sad, right? I think I, again, wanted to be an exercise in grace and say, I think you should have friends and I think you should go outside. And I will also say, I didn't necessarily think about the economic consequences of all of this, right? In a piece that I did after, I called it Economic Crisis, I said, okay, guys, we are in a recession. Everything is really expensive. And this is also making everyone really depressed. Because I think that was the second thing I heard most of all, where it would say, or people would say, I have no money. Everything is so expensive. Cocktails are $20, $25 at some places in New York City. You know, and I was like, yeah, you're right. I didn't fight with those people. I didn't push back because I live in New York City. I'm an adult. I said, you're completely right. Everything is really expensive. The rent is really expensive. And so I think all of these sort of societal factors are combining to create a generation of anxious and lonely and depressed people. And I think it's very hard to sometimes look in the mirror and say, ooh, maybe it's not necessarily the most helpful or the healthiest behavior to have a screen time of 13 hours and like not have any friends, right? I didn't think that was that provocative.
Right. And one of the things that you identified when we first were talking about this is that it's not just Gen Z, but if you read into more of these headlines, often Gen Z is like the term that is tacked on in front of it. So it's like why Gen Z doesn't want to drink much. So that is from the Wall Street Journal. And then there's Gen Z doesn't want to start a bar tab, which is in the New York Times, or in The Guardian again, Gen Z yearns for the pre-digital dating era, but don't ask them out in person. And so you made sure to say it wasn't just Gen Z. Do you have a concept of like who this is when you're talking about these people? Does it have a specific age range or is it kind of ageless?
I think it is kind of ageless. I don't necessarily profile people. I'm not going to say like it's this specific type of person.
Yeah.
But it does feel like it's a little bit more ageless. I think when we have the conversations about economic anxiety and like the economic crisis and the recession, I feel like a lot more millennials chime in just because we have 10 to 15 years more experience, right? We say, oh, I'm, 37 and I can't afford to live on my own, or I've been laid off 14 times. Like that is very real. And I say, yeah, you're real for that. I totally understand why you're talking about not wanting to party or not wanting to go outside or not wanting to, drink or do anything. But then when you sort of move in the other direction, it's like people who never got the chance to experience this, right? And I think you're online a lot, so when we say it's the phones, and everyone rushes out of the woodwork to say, no, it's not. And now,
right.
Right.
Yes.
And now we're finally, the first generation that grew up with phones is coming of age. And obviously, parentheses COVID, but like aside from COVID, they don't talk to each other in public. A lot of them are weird. A lot of them are anxious. A lot of them are like socially stunted and like kind of keening and fawning and fighting with people on the internet and saying, I don't understand why the world changed so much. And I'm like, I do, but nobody wants to listen to me when I say.
Well, yeah, like you said, it's a lot of different things. And I definitely want to dive more into like the phone of it all in a bit. But this is not like out of nowhere, especially as both of us growing up as millennials, like the idea of like, I know in college, I had a shirt that said like staying in is the new going out. And I would just like wear it around. Or like even like one of the most viral like John Mulaney jokes or like sort of quips is that canceling plans feels like heroin. Like this is something that's been, creeping into our culture for some time. I'm curious, like when do you think it started rearing its head a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. I was going to say, I think I can identify a shift, right? Because not to, out myself too much, but there was a time where all of my dating exclusively took place in person, right? I would meet people out and we would hang out, whatever. And then in 2015, right when Tinder sort of hit the scene and became very, very sort of acceptable socially, I like never met people out again, right?
Yeah.
It just was such a jarring shift. It was sort of shocking, right? When you talk about it with people who are a little bit younger than us, you'll say, oh, but like I used to meet people out all the time. People would just walk up to you and you would flirt, whatever. And they would say, what? That doesn't happen. That's not real. And I'm like, well, I lived it. I was 24. Like it was real. And so sort of seeing this shift, I think right around the times that you're identifying, 2015, 2016, I think the end of twee, the end of hipster, right? That like mustache striped Zoe Deschanel, like that person was very into the I love staying home and watching whatever and baking cookies and making like little cakes in a mug. That was very BuzzFeed.
Yeah, cakes in a mug.
Like that was an era, and that was a person that you would expect to be like, well, I'm not going to ask you to come to the club with me because you're watching New Girl and reading or knitting or whatever.
Plus, we were wearing business casual to the club at that time.
You know what? I stand by my business casual. I love those pictures. Every time I look, I'm like, damn, you look good.
You're like, I slayed, actually.
Yeah, no. Now you go to the gay bar and everyone is in like Lululemon. And I'm like, what's this?
You're like, come on, guys, put on a blazer.
Yeah, I miss the blazer.
Yeah, no, what you're saying about like dating apps is also another thing that I feel like is part of this, is that like when apps came in, the kind of one would pop up to fix like every conceivable, not even just problem, but like piece of friction in our lives, to the point that, yeah, the idea of going up to someone and risking them saying no in person feels, I think, understandably devastating if you've had no experience with that and are able to like move on and brush it off. And, I'm thinking we did an episode about Partiful and in general, like online invites, and the way that like, in my opinion, the maybe attending button just like ruined etiquette, because now like you never know who's coming and who isn't. Like they can say attending, at first it would be maybe attending and then you would just never know. But now, even if that isn't an option, even if someone says they're attending, it is like totally normal now that you never see them. And so it's this digital etiquette that has now just like seeped into these real world consequences where, again, it's like flaking is rising, probably because sometimes I feel like I don't know, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to this party tonight. But the idea of texting the person or letting the person know you can't go feels like more of a burden than just showing up. And then maybe you show up and have fun and like meet someone. But now it's like, you can just be like, I don't feel like it. And I don't have to do anything. And then you can just sit home and let it slide. And so it's all these little digital changes that ended up taking like necessary friction out of our life.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I recently talked about that where I said like people crave a frictionless life, and it makes no sense because it's like, if you, not to be, all zen about it, but like if there is no friction, then there is no life. Like you can't expect everything to be easy for you all the time, but a lot of people don't understand that. So it is this weird sort of experience where I think the rise of flaking culture has really hit like party culture, right? Where now so many people just feel so comfortable just like not showing up to things and not saying a word. And I think I come from, I'm from New York, I'm from the Bronx. I will say, oh, it hurt my feelings when you didn't come to my thing, like very starkly. And I think that's sort of affected my friendships because people actually show up for you more when you call them out. But I know that, again, this same conversation we're having, it's harder for people to have that conversation, right? It's sort of like the rise of ghosting where, again, once the digital was sort of introduced into the analog in our dating lives, ghosting became the sort of prevalent way of not ever breaking up with someone, right? Like in 2016, I was always sending my little texts saying, hey, I had fun, but I don't see this going anywhere. And it would be 2 sentences and I would never see them again, and it was fine. And now, I don't know, I feel like ghosting and flaking sort of introduced this new level of anxiety because it's like the next time you see that person, or if you ever see them again, it's going to be really weird because it's like, why didn't you come to my birthday party?
Yeah. No, I started to do that. That was my thing like this past year. Or the year before also is like, if someone hurts my feelings, I need to start telling them that happened. Yeah. Otherwise it just festers. Yeah. And then there's a wedge in your relationship.
Yeah. And it's hard for, as a Redditor, right? It's hard for the other person because they don't understand. And meanwhile, you're on Reddit writing screeds about like, on Reddit, there's this whole culture of people who are so aggrieved and so resentful, but they can't. It's so fascinating because you'll see every single reply. There will be 1,000 replies of people saying, talk to them, have a conversation with them, call them on the phone. And they act like it's inconceivable. They're like, but why would I do that? And I'm like, Mama, you just wrote 6 paragraphs about how your feelings were hurt. Right. This is a 10-minute phone call. Like it's
so interesting. I know you've actually, I feel like, mentioned online your like Reddit lore of like getting kicked out. But I think what's because like you are also a sociologist, correct?
Yes, I have a master's in sociology.
Right. And so you're going in there giving people genuine advice from like an informed standpoint, and they just don't want to hear it. Is that what's happening?
I think, yeah, it's really fascinating. I think in my first year on TikTok, I understood that my persona came across a little bit condescending. And I think I sort of needed to tweak that where it was like, I didn't want to come across as elitist because I had an education. It was more specifically that I was just like a mean gay guy, and a lot of people don't want life advice from someone who's like not sweet or pleasant. And we can go into the sociology of that, right? Because I'm not white, I'm from New York, whatever. But it was interesting because as soon as I started like coming to them as like a big brother figure or saying, guys, like the sociology of it all is interesting, but it doesn't matter that I have a master's. Like, I'm right. I lived this. Like, it's also like, I'm not coming from a place of judgment or like sort of what I was saying earlier with Substack, where I'm coming from a place of grace. I think actually writing and being on TikTok for the last 3 years has made me a lot more empathetic. I'm not the sweetest person, right? But I think I have a lot of empathy. I have a lot of grace because I understand that so many people are suffering, right? Like I have a whole dating series where I'm constantly giving advice to like 22-year-olds, and I'm like, situationships are the devil. Like this is also the rise of flaking culture and ghosting culture and all the stuff that we're talking about right now, where having a sort of maybe amorphous relationship with someone who doesn't like you is not good for the mental health. And I think those videos have done a lot better. Once I sort of decided to take a step back from the like lecturing and talking down to people, and was just like, listen, I've been there, spent my 20s dating people who hated my guts. Like trust me, this is not going to end well for you. And it ended up working out a lot better.
Let's take one final break, and when we return, we'll talk about how capitalism and culture at large has encouraged us to cancel all our plans instead to bed rot, and what, if anything, we can do about it. I don't know about you, but as summer transitions to fall, it has been peak wedding season in my friend group, and I've been running out of dresses to wear to each event, and I wanted to mix it up, but I didn't want to end up spending thousands of dollars. So I turned to Quince, and I opted for the washable stretch silk high-neck midi dress in, of course, butter yellow, which worked as a bridesmaid's dress, but that I also know I'll be turning to again and again this holiday party season. Now that things are calming down and I can rest and recoup, I've been wearing my Quince ultra soft high-rise leggings to yoga, or if we're being honest, also to my couch because it is getting a little too cold out for me to venture outside. Quince has all the elevated essentials for fall. Think 100% Mongolian cashmere from $50, washable silk tops and skirts, and perfectly tailored denim, all at prices that feel too good to be true. Keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/online for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/online to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/online. Today's world is changing so fast that it's easy to feel lost. One thing that can help is amazing mentors. If you're in need of insights that could make your life better, you need Masterclass. Now, as a writer and longtime David Sedaris fan, I knew the moment I saw his storyteller and humor class that it was the class for me. Specifically, I'll be learning how to turn everyday moments into funny stories. But this isn't just helpful when it comes to my job. It also means I'll be the funniest person in my group chat. Now, my friends might beg to differ, but they'd be wrong because now my quippy anecdotes will be David Sedaris approved. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. With plans starting at $10 a month, billed annually, you get unlimited access to over 200 classes taught by the world's best business leaders, writers, chefs, and more. Right now, ICYMI listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/online. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/online, masterclass.com/online.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. I love going through Saks.com because it is so easy to find new arrivals from my favorite designers, and I get a lot of inspiration for my personal style. With fall coming up, I think it's time for reinvention. I think it's time for a wardrobe refresh. So I've been going on Saks.com because I have my eye on a few Jenny Kane sweaters, and thank God they have them all in stock. But that's my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. Whether it's a date night, a vacation, a special occasion, or just lounging in style, Saks helps you find the perfect look for every occasion. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.
One of the reasons, when I think about why someone would feel kind of stuck in this mindset is that it's gone mainstream. It's in our branding. It's in our Subway ads. And John Early has a special, Now More Than Ever, which I love because there's a segment on it that is just it feels like I cite it in so many different things I write because it all kind of comes back to this. And so he's talking about a similar, he's identifying a similar loserdom, and talking about it from the standpoint of is this how millennials will be remembered? And so he says, when we're loading up the time capsule for the inhabitants of Planet E, is this what the millennials shall put forth? And he's talking about Postmates ads that are on Subways and stuff where the slogans are
when you want omakase, but your bra's off. We get it. Postmates. And then there was one, and I'm not kidding. It was in the same campaign. I was driving down highways. It was on giant billboards. It was, by the way, mass shootings everywhere. On skyscrapers, giant skyscrapers, painted on huge buildings. It literally said, hate people? We get it, Postmates.
And he was like, are we like that? Are we really just a bunch of hot messes? Like, I'm such a mess. I ordered cupcakes again. I took a nap by accident. Given our contributions to language as a generation, we should be tried at The Hague. So that's his take on this. But yeah, it's like, it doesn't help when you're like, okay, I'm feeling really lonely. I'm feeling like it's really hard to meet people. And the sort of devil voice in my head is telling me to stay in all night. And then you're passing like an ad from a food app company that's like, you don't want to go out? Perfect. We'll deliver it. It's just like all this stuff that is like affirming that decision. And it feels kind of predatory in terms of just like the health of our society.
Yeah, and it's sort of a chicken and the egg situation where it's like, which one comes first, right? The culture of people saying, staying in is the new heroin or whatever. That's not what it says. Don't quote me. Staying in is like crack or whatever, and I want to order cupcakes versus this company saying, well, we see your behavior. We know that you guys are home like Monday through Friday. Mm-hmm. And all of these companies have so much data, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. And I wanted to respond to what you said about John Early as well, because I do love him. It's fascinating because I think millennials were the first generation to sort of embrace this hot mess persona, right? Mm-hmm. Like we all remember where we were when we were watching like Trainwreck and Amy Schumer and all of these comedians who were very like, I'm unapologetically like, ordering cupcakes for breakfast and like having a Bloody Mary on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. And it's fascinating because I sociologically am like, this is a whole other conversation, right? But like millennials are very much stuck in this sort of eternal childhood, which is obviously because of the economy and all of the recessions and all that stuff. But it's fascinating that we just like wholeheartedly embrace that, right? And then going to the sort of Gen Z of it all, where if we're the hot messes, then they are. Again, I don't want to be mean, but it's like 20 years ago, it was odd to tell someone, I have no friends, I don't go outside, I don't have any hobbies, I spend all my time in bed either watching TV or on my phone. And now it's normal. Like everyone, or not everyone, but most, I don't know, 75% of them are like, yeah, that's what I did on Saturday. And I'm like,
yeah, and like somebody's just to one up it. It's like I have even less friends. People hate me. Like, and we touched on this earlier, and I think now is the time to just dive into this because the phones. I mean, this is when we're talking about how this gets expressed. We're talking about it in comments on TikTok, like you mentioned in your piece. You just sort of punctuate your paragraphs with these comments that are saying things exactly like that. Like, why would I go out when everything's expensive? I just want to be in my bed. I'm so tired. And, you know, it's the brand that in some ways people are performing online. But then there's also sort of the concrete data that it shows, like the moment phones enter the picture, the rates of people hanging out with one another and making friends and getting into romantic relationships start plummeting. This is around like 2008. And that is actually a contentious position sometimes to take online, that it's the phones. And I know you were referencing this where people are so quick to be like, no, it's not, it's other things. And so I'm wondering, where do you land? Like, how responsible do you think phones are in this?
I think I'm very, very clear about my position whenever I talk about the dating apps or whenever I talk about friendship or parties or in the antisocial century in the Atlantic and all of that data that recently came out about Americans need to party more. I think as soon as the smartphones and sort of not even smartphones really, but I think widespread algorithmic social media combined with the smartphones, combined with dating apps, combined with economic crisis all sort of hit the country in a way that is sort of inexplicable and inexcusable and just like a vortex of chaos. Because like obviously you can't in statistics and data and whatever, you can't like pinpoint one thing, right? Correlation does not equal causation. But at the same time, if you look at the graph and it's like when Tinder hit and then everyone started meeting online, that crazy chart in the New York Times where it's like, how did the couples meet in the wedding section before it was all coworkers or school, and now 90% of them met online. It's shocking. Yeah. It's just like, as someone who looks at data, you're like, well, there's a quote from Buffy that I use all the time where it's like, I didn't jump to conclusions. I simply took a step and their conclusions were.
Yeah. No, literally, I was in a conversation with someone last night and they asked how me and my husband met. And I was explaining, and then I like sort of made a comment that I'm like, you know, it wasn't on a dating app. And then I was like, do I sound smug? I was like, do I sound like there's such a clear divide where I'm like, I think, again, like people use the last chopper out of Nam thing a lot when it's like, I do think he and I got, and we were both on dating apps casually, but that's not how we met. And it's like just under the wire because like you said, it's to tell these stories now. It sounds like like me and my husband meeting because a friend set us up at a bar sounds like a fairy tale to like a generation now.
No, literally. And like, it's fascinating because I think a couple of years ago, this is going to be really insider baseball. I'm sorry, guys. Do you remember a couple of years ago on TikTok, there was that like invisible string theory. And all these people were posting about how they like, it was you all along because we went to the same camp or we went to the same school. Yeah. And I was like, no, that's sociology. That's how everyone used to meet. Before 2007, 99% of couples either met at work or because you lived near each other. Like statistically, you were the people most likely to marry each other. It would be not to like point fingers, but there was just one in the New York Times and it was like, upper middle class white people who have like beach houses on Cape Cod. And they were like, I couldn't believe that I married my childhood crush. And I'm like, I can. That's what the data would say. Like sociologically, that's exactly who I would expect you to marry. The guy was the beach house next to yours. And
that's who you're literally hanging out with.
Yeah, right. And it's like when you go to these elite institutions and blah, 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 it's like, yeah, I'm not surprised that you guys married each other. Anyway, it's insane because it's like, not to talk about my own lore, but I've had relationships that were punctuated by like these massive sort of shifts in the culture, right? Like I dated someone in like 2015, 2016. Then I was single during COVID and I saw the complete, like the shift. If you were not single, both in 2016 and in 2020, you have no understanding of the way that the behaviors have shifted. Like it is, books should be written. There should be studies done. Like I need 15 therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists to help me understand. But like people are just different now. The behaviors are different. Everyone is just changed. And I think this is sort of related to what we're talking about now, where the expectation of showing up for each other, even in a dating context, is completely absent. Like even the expectation of like texting someone and saying, hey, do you want to come on this date? Or are we still on for tonight? Right? Is gone.
Oh, wow. Wait, that is so interesting. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so this is something I actually have very barely talked about online.
Oh my God, exclusive.
So this is an exclusive. But yeah, in 2016, in January, February of 2016, I went on 30 first dates in 1 month. And it was insane. And that's like a book in and of itself. But like...
Wait, sorry, I'm trying to interrupt. Was that because, were like you doing that for a project, or is that just how it worked out?
No, the project was I wanted a boyfriend.
Right, project boyfriend. Yes, got it.
So... just saying that number now feels actually like criminal because now like anyone who's on the dating apps now fully understands that if you get one date a month, it's magical, right? Unless you are obviously like Alex Earl or whatever. But yeah, it's just this stark shift in the way that like people respond to each other. And like, I think back then, I would say in 2015, 2016, there was this understanding that like, we are here to hang out. We're going to meet. We're going to do whatever we're going to do. And then if it doesn't work, it doesn't work and we'll both move on. Whereas now, I would say in 2020, 2021, there was this, I noticed this like rise of prolonged talking stages. And I know that Gen Z loves a talking stage. They're very obsessed with that. For people who don't know, a talking stage is like just exchanging messages. You're not dating. You're not physically involved. You're not romantically involved. You're literally just talking. And I would say, well, let's go to a bar. Let's get a drink. Let's get a coffee. Let's go for a walk. And guys would be like, oh, they would sort of give me the runaround. And I'm like, well, I don't want to talk to you for 6 months. I don't know you. Like, right. You're a stranger. Why do I want to talk to a literal stranger on a dating app for 6-8 months? And that's like normal now. It's really shocking. Just like in my own 3-4 years, like being off the apps now, being back then saying, wait, what happened?
Yeah, I think it's like whether it's the phones, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's those things combined, which I think in my opinion is the case. One of the things that most surprised me is like, I mean, during the pandemic, I learned for the first time that I am an extrovert. Like I said, I had the shirt that said staying in is the new going out. And it wasn't until we could only stay in that I realized that actually I am an extrovert and I really need to see my friends. And staying in to me is only fun if it is a reprieve from like doing lots of stuff. And so when the restrictions were lifting and everyone was getting vaccinated and we could all hang out again, I was expecting us to like do some like stampede to the bar and that we would like totally drop back in to we would not even drop back in. We would now truly appreciate what we had and just be I don't know, like going up to everyone and I'm teeing all this up. Clearly it didn't happen. Like, why didn't we bounce back?
That's so fascinating because I think there was this idea, right, during like 2020, during lockdown, a lot of people were predicting this like roaring 20s that we were all going to get out there and be feral. And I will say, as an asterisk, for our queer listeners, I think the queer community is sort of experiencing that. Gay men, I should say, to be very specific. Like, there's a lot of discourse around gay men right now. But I don't think that we saw that in the overall population. And it was so interesting. I think, like, we are obviously not trying to downplay this, like, mass disabling event, this, like, mass event that, like, permanently affected so many people and we lost so many people. And I think there is this sort of trauma. Can't have a conversation without trauma. There is this sort of like societal trauma that we're all carrying around of like, oh, that was really intense, right? And I think even though it's been 4 years, 5 years, people are like, 4 years since the vaccinations, 4 years, people are like, I don't know. I think a lot of people realized that they don't necessarily have it in them to like go out, but I think we are sort of living the downstream effects of that, where now they're realizing, like, again, I don't have any friends, I don't have any hobbies, my screen time is 16 hours a day, and I'm like, well, we're out here, you know what I mean? Like, there are communities, there are people that are outside, they're very small, and they're sort of affected by this mass pulling back from the, bonhomie of being outside and enjoying the company of other people. I identify as an introvert, but I realized during COVID that I really need it. Like, I like to be alone sometimes, but I also go out 5 nights a week. So it's like, I like coming home. I like, hanging out, but I also like being with my friends. And not to sort of attack anyone, but I will say that people who were partnered at the time were a lot more sort of comfortable with the new status quo, where they were like, oh, I'll just like hang out with my fiance, hang out with my boyfriend, whatever. And I would say, well, some of us are single. Like, we need to go out. Like, if I don't want to meet someone on a dating app, I unfortunately have to subject myself to the bar or to this, like, I don't know, queer knitting circle or whatever. And like
being subjected to the queer knitting circle.
And like, I want you guys to come with me and nobody wants to come with me. But yeah, to speak more generally, sociologically, I do think that there is this thing where we could have gone one of two ways, right? We could have gone post Spanish flu, like roaring 20s, everyone like hedonism, everyone's freaking out. And I think, not to be that person, but I think if we didn't have the phones, that sort of could have happened. Whereas I think, to sort of be intersectional about it, I think, again, gay men now have all of these apps and so many more sort of freedoms and are exploring like sexual liberties that we haven't had for 40 years. And that's creating a whole other sort of roaring 20s, right? But contrasted very starkly with the mainstreaming of loserdom and the antisocial century and all of these things where people on other, of other identities and on other spectrums are just not back outside, and they're not like interacting with each other in real life the way that we wanted them to or expected them to. Yeah.
And obviously the answer to this question is like unknown, but like, I do believe that people would be happier if we felt, you don't have to be entirely outside, but if we found a better balance. So like, how do you think, can this trend be reversed? And is it just being in Reddit and talking to the girlies who are sad? Like, is it just modeling the behavior, like showing up at bars and going to the queer knitting circle? Like, how do you think we can get out of this?
Go to the queer knitting circle.
Yes, with Josh specifically, because you're looking for friends. Yeah.
No, I think you are right. I think there is this sort of return behavior that we need to model, but I do also think you can't have a conversation about any of this stuff without capitalism, right? So the money of it all, I do think this conversation around third spaces is a very real conversation. And I do think that like there need to be more places. I don't know if this is like a Bernie Sanders proposal or something, but like there need to be more spaces that are free to hang out, that there are people at, right? Because we tell people, go to the park and go to this, go to that. And it's like, okay, but like, how long can you just sit at the park by yourself,
Right.
There have to be spaces that are community oriented, that are very, very, very low cost, that will bring a different mix of people, that will bring sort of fun, positive energy. Because I'm not going to say like, go to a bar or go to a restaurant, right? Like, money is an issue. So I do think that we need more third spaces. We need to model the behaviors. We need to go out, even if it's twice a week. Like, Samin Nosrat just wrote a new book and she's talking about this like dinner ritual that she has where she cooks a meal every week, and whoever comes, right? It's like a ritual. Everybody knows dinner on Monday night is at Samin's house. Things like that. Like I think there are creators who are sort of seeing this moment and starting to create these in-person, like real life experiences for people to connect again. Because I do think that on the other side, right, we can like sit here and sort of whatever about all of this stuff, but like there are people who are trying to fix the issue, right? Like on the flip side, there is this real hunger. Like when I talk to Gen Z, when I talk to my followers, I'm like, what's going on, you guys? And they're like, we want to be outside, we want to meet people, we want to be at the queer netting circle, I want to make friends. And so it's not like I don't want to sort of say that every single one of them is completely resolved to never have a friend and never get married or never do anything, right? I think there is a real spiritual and like societal hunger for these experiences. And I think somebody very wealthy needs to sort of stand up and meet the moment, because I think that is where, if I were to, I'm not a futurist, but if I were to predict what the next like 5-10 years will look like, it is this return to real life in-person experiences that are not necessarily like concerts and events where we were in 2019, where everybody thought that's where like advertising was, right? Experiential, blah, blah, blah. Like that is now Ticketmaster. You can't, like, nobody has $300 to go see Ariana Grande. Like,
right.
There need to be low-cost solutions for people to meet in person, because people do want to meet in person. And I think that's where the next moment is.
Okay, that's the show, and I want to thank Josh Laura for joining us. You can catch Josh on Substack and TikTok under the handle Tell the Bees. We'll be back in your feed on Wednesday, so definitely subscribe. That way you never miss an episode. Go and leave us a rating and a review in Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod and over on Instagram, also at ICYMI_pod. And you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com. ICYMI is produced by Vic Whitley-Berry, Candice Lim, and me, Kate Lindsay. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer, Mia Lobel is Slate's executive producer of podcasts, and Hillary Fry is Slate's editor-in-chief. See you online or fighting with strangers in X-Men forums.
Doug. Here we have the Limu Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Limu? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
Listen. That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. The sound of captivating electric performance, dynamic drive, and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined. The fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron.